And gentlemen, will you please join me in welcoming back to the stage writer, editor and director, Robert Campillo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's it. I'm going away.
This is a Q&A session for all of you. So we do have roving mics. If you put up your hand, we'll try and get a mic to you. Robin, I'm going to start by asking you, this is a film that revisits a very particular period in time, and it has a great deal of specificity in relation to that, and a period of time that's very important to you personally. But it also has a very strong resonance for the times we're in right now, in terms of its connection to social division and forgotten topics, if you like. Can you talk a little bit about your attraction to those two things and the tension between those two things for you?
To be honest, I didn't do this film thinking of today. I did this film when I could do it, you know, because it's been a long time I was thinking of doing a film about the AIDS epidemic in France. I mean, from the very start of the epidemic, like in '82 when I was 20 years old, and as a young gay guy I discovered that this disease were going to be a disaster for my community or for a lot of people I knew and myself. So it took me so much time. I was thinking of what film I could do, and for me the cinema was useless in front of this event in the 80s. I got in ACT UP in '92 for many years, and it helped me to reinvent myself. But I did a lot of things, writing texts, doing posters, imagining actions like happenings or this kind of thing, and it helped me a lot. But it didn't help me already to think about doing a film. So I did it like, it was so close to my eyes that I didn't see, actor was so close to my eyes that I didn't see that that was the topic of my film. So it took me, it's like 6 years ago, because when I was working on my previous film, Eastern Boys, I was talking with my two producers and some part of the crew of Eastern Boys. And one of my producers, Hugues Charbonneau, who was in ACT UP with me in the early 90s, we had this argument because I thought that I didn't have enough time to do my film. I wanted to have more days to shoot the film. And I said to him, you owe me, and he said, no, I don't owe you anything. And I said, it's like a running gag between us for many years. I said to him, you owe me because I dressed up your boyfriend when he was dead. And so it was funny for us, but not exactly for the people around us. And so the other producer, Marie-Ange asked me, but what are you talking about? And we talked a little bit about what happened 25 years ago. And she knew I was working a little bit on that. And she said, you have to do it now, because if you don't do it now, you will never do this film, because she knew that was very important for me. And I was really afraid not to do something I would be a little bit satisfied with. And so I did it for that. But it's true that when I did this film, because I worked with young actors who were mostly gays, I realized the generation gap between them and me. You know, even if I have wrote the script before, I realized that I didn't know that they didn't know all this genealogy of this epidemic, of the struggle. And I didn't do it. I didn't do this film because I thought it was important for this generation or for the rest of the society. But I realized doing it, doing it that it was important, but it was not the purpose. It was just selfish. I thought it could be a good film.
Well, not entirely selfish, if I may say. Can I ask you, one of the things I admire hugely about the narrative approach to the film is that you start out with a very, very wide canvas. You are introducing us to many people all at once, and then you kind of zoom in to Nathan and Sean as characters. Yeah. Can you tell us about that decision? Because I feel in the context of sort of dramatic structure, this is an unusual choice.
There's something I'm trying to do. I tried to do that a little bit on my previous film. I like the fact that I like to lose the spectator. I think in most of the films, the directors are considering spectators like children. You should take by the hand and to reassure, now you are in this scene and now in this scene. And now when I came to act up the first time, it was like in the film. You have someone who is telling you, it works like this, you have to do that, you have to raise your hand in order to talk and this kind of thing. And after the first meeting was starting and you didn't understand anything and you didn't know anyone, and I loved this idea that I was lost and I wanted to lose the spectator with me. And I wanted also, because there's an expression, I don't know if you have it in English, when you talk about a big book or a big film with a lot of characters and who goes for a long time, we say film fleuve, river film. Like the film is like a river. And I love this expression, and that's what I was thinking when I was doing this film, that you are in the big flow and you go from this character to the other characters and you don't know, you see that Nathan, which is a newcomer, is a little bit going closer to Thibaut and after to Nathan and after to another character. And I love the fact that you are drifted a little bit from a character. And it's like how a love story begins. It's like maybe some kind of random thing, and because of this kiss, because of this homophobic sentence of the young girl in the school, something can happen, some kind of form can emerge of this chaos. And I love this idea that I can lose sometimes the spectator and I can sometimes stay in a scene for a long time and try to look at my actors very precisely. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's it.
There's another very significant movement in the film, I think, one from the intellect, the space of debate and discussion and protest, to one of bodies, and this, this very confronting, I'm getting goosebumps even as I'm saying it, this very confronting reality of the illness and of the illness of the sickness setting in. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that for you as a concept and the importance of that movement in the film?
In fact, that's why it's very strange, because people are talking to me a lot about this film, as if the film was very naturalistic or realistic. It's very true about the way the actors are playing. It's not so true about the structure of the film. First of all, you don't see a lot of things outside act up. You are really in the group, which is not so natural. But I try to confront what I call space-times in the film. You have one big space-time, which is the amphitheater, and for me it works like a brain, with people imagining things, and they are imagining that other space-time, which are the actions. And so the actions are like fantasy images that parasite the debates, that because the first debate, for instance, they are talking about an action who was done just before the meeting, and people are discussing about the perception. Was it too violent? Was it? And so they are talking about these images, which are for me like quite hallucinations, you know. And so there's this, that's another space, time space, which is the action, and another one is the club, which was very important for me, because I wanted to show the club is the negative of the amphitheater. The amphitheater, you have a lot of talking, the walls are very white, you don't have any windows, and in the club, they are surrounded by darkness. They don't talk, you just have the bodies, and I like this idea to metamorphose, to make mutation with this club scene until the end, because at the end it's like people are becoming just like light events, you know, they are like stars that shine and disappear like this, and I loved the idea. So I worked on mainly on these three spaces, and at the end when Sean is getting too ill to be part of this group, he's just cornered in the hospital room and in his own apartment at the end of the film. And it's also because, I mean, that's the way it happens when you get really sick. Your space narrows a lot, and I wanted to show that very much.
Thank you. Are there questions in the audience? I'm sure. Can we have a microphone here? One here, one there. There's some up the back there too. So one here first. Go here and then we'll go to you. Go ahead.
Hi, Robin.
Hi.
I was at your screening in New York with the Eastern Voice. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for this movie. I want to have a question about the soundtrack to the movie, because now in like last 2 months in Paris and all the underground parties, they close the sets with the Bronsky beat,
Yeah.
and they say like, oh, we got inspired by the 120 beats per minute. So I want to ask about the soundtrack. How did you come out with it? Was there something
Specifically with the Jimmy Somerville song?
Oh yeah.
Yes. In fact, Jimmy Somerville gave money to Didier Lestrade, the co-founder of ACT UP, for creating ACT UP. So he was very connected, and I think that. You know, they have some kind of commission, medical commission in a flat in the film. In reality, it was the flat of Jimmy Somerville, the flat he had in Paris. I think so. Maybe it's not true. You'll see. And it's so. I think in '91 he did a gig, a big concert for ACT UP Paris to raise money for the group. And I was to this concert. It was one year before I get into the group. And when he started to sing this song, because this song was quite, not before the epidemic, but it was at the very beginning of the epidemic, the people were starting to cry. It was so emotional. So I asked Jimmy Somerville if it was possible for him to be in the film and to recreate this concert. And he didn't want to be filmed. I can understand. But I asked him to have the music and to have the multi-track tape in order to. I wanted to make a remix a little bit like in the 90s. So I asked my composer, Arnaud Robotini, to make, because Arnaud Robotini is also a DJ, so he has all the instruments, you know, of the 90s, and he can imitate all that. So he did this new remix, and because I have all the tracks, I wanted a little bit Jimmy Somerville to be here. So I stopped all the tracks and just let his voice without reverberation, very dry sound. And it's a moment where Nathan is so alone in this club. I wanted this voice to sound in the ear of the spectator. And also it's all a work in progress for me, because you have this voice, and at the same time you see this screen of particles of dust which make a screen between Nathan and the rest of the group. And you have at the end the breathing of Jimmy Somerville, and it becomes the breathing of Sean, which is in the hospital. And after you have the Red River. For me, it was like something that made sense during the editing. Maybe it doesn't, but for me it did at the time. No, but that was very important. And why this music? It's because this music was a little bit like the soundtrack for me and for a lot of us of this epidemic, because it was such a party music, a club music, but I mean house music, obviously. But at the same time, it was like a little bit haunted by a kind of melancholy. And that's why I wanted to pay tribute to this music very much. So that's it.
Over here.
Robin, thank you for your beautiful film.
Thanks.
Just about the characters are very brilliantly written and very imperfect, and I found myself agreeing with them and disagreeing with them and changing and swapping. I wonder, when you were writing it, or before you were writing it, whether you yourself felt that you related to one of the characters more than any of the others, or whether any of the characters is supposed to represent your personal point of view on that period?
Physically, I would like to be like Nathan, but even when I was younger, that was not the case. Of course, Nathan is a newcomer, so it was like my position when I came to actor. But the only thing that is related to me in what he is deeply is when he's talking about his past, it's really my past. That's the only thing. But the rest of it, I think I'm very connected to Thibaut, even if I was not president of ACT UP, and even if at this time I was very shy, I didn't talk during the debate for 2 or 3 years when I was in ACT UP. So because it was a little bit impressive, because you had a lot of very strong personalities, and I didn't feel so legitimate to talk. And the other thing, you have a lot small pieces of me in every characters. For instance, I dressed up a friend who was dead with his mother, like in the film. It's hard to say, but it was quite more fun than in the film, because the mother was talking a lot to his son, and at a moment I was thinking it was a little bit ridiculous, but I couldn't do it during the shooting, because the actors were so impressed. So I let them do as they could do it, you know. But in reality, I was quite, not laughing, but I was thinking that it was surreal, the situation. So you have a lot of me a little bit everywhere, but there's no character who embody me. That would be dull.
So we have a question up the back here somewhere. Could you stand up so we can see you?
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi. Thanks very much for the film. I just wanted to talk about one of the things I liked about it very much, which was the representation of sex, and particularly the scene where Sean is with Thibaut and he asks him to leave, and then Nathan comes in and gives him a hand job. Could you talk more about why that's in there?
I have. Oh no, it's. No, like, you know, you have this kind of questions which are a little bit intimate, and so you try to avoid, to dodge a little bit. And so what I could say is that it happened a lot, first of all, to have sex in the hospitals, back in the days. And you know, it's very interesting, because when I wrote the scene in the script, it was more, not pornographic, but more intense than this, you know, because it was not just a hand job, and it was, Nathan was supposed to come on the face of Sean, you know? And I realized that it was exactly what I hated in sex scene on cinema, that it was a kind of performance, you know, that I was doing that maybe to shock people, and that was absolutely not my topic. What I realized, and because of my actors, and because I'm I try to stay open during the shooting. I realized that in this case, because you know, when you imagine scene and you imagine characters, after you have real actors, and real actors, they cannot do everything. They can do what they can do as we can do in reality, you know. So I realized, first of all, that it was difficult for Sean to take the sex, the cock of, of Nathan out of his pants, for instance. So that became more interesting than what I was thinking of. Because what I realized during the scene is that what I was interested in the scene is that we understand that they didn't have sex for many months. And that's for me very important, because we never talked about that, even in actor. But when people have a big disease like this, there's a moment where sex stops. And that happened a lot. And we never talk about that. So I wanted to feel that, and I wanted also that not to know, I wanted the moves of Nathan to be interpreted. You don't know if he makes love or he takes care of Sean. And for me, that was the most important thing. That it's not medical gesture, but it's something like taking care of the other. And I loved this ambiguity. And I realized that's what I wanted to show. And the last thing I wanted to show is the fact that it's a kind of relief a little bit for Sean. And he's crying at the same time because we know that's the last relief. And that he's going to die. So it's just like an open door at a moment, an open window, but it's got locked just after. And I love this idea. But it's all about the actors at this moment. Because I can't help them so much. I can tell us things, but after it's really them who embody this kind of situation. And so thank for them.
Robin, I'm going to ask you to expand a little bit, given that you are writing, you are directing, and you are editing, on how those three things work for you in the elements of bringing the film together. Is it quite a fluid process? Are you crossing backwards and forwards between those elements, or are you, I do this bit first, I do this bit next, and so forth?
I tried, when I'm thinking of the script, I'm thinking of the editing of the film. You know, you have to imagine that you have this club scene where people are dancing, and after you see the particles upon them, and when you look at the particles more precisely, you can see something like a virus, and from the virus, you get to this kind of expose during the meetings and about how AIDS work and contaminates. So you have, it's a kind of editing, and it's a lot of talking about the shooting at the same way. I like the fact that it's always possible for me to you know, for instance, the script, I change it during the shooting a lot, all the dialogues and even the situation. And even during the editing, when I'm not happy with some sentence, I just do dubbing. I change the sentence even if it's done, and I do it a lot of time. I never stop writing the film, and I think of the editing very early. For me, it's important because it's like I try to think of the film like a substance, like something I can move and recreate all the time. So it's very important for me to yes, you know, I did my previous film to be a little more clear. My previous film was with a guy who was getting invaded by foreigners, and it was like a threat, but at the same time it was like a promise for him. And I feel my film like this. I was very sad when I was writing the script because it was very hard, really. To be honest, that was very emotional. And after, when all those actors, which are sometimes like a pain in the ass, and the crew and all those people, when they came to, they invade my film, that was so helping for me, because it was like the exorcist thing, you know, that they got the emotion, and I was just like, okay, you know, and so it's it's always a work in progress, and I like to be open during all the shooting and all the editing, all the process.
Well, congratulations on what I think is an extraordinary film. Obviously,
Thank you.
the Cannes jury also thought that,
Yeah.
and now, of course, it is the French entry for the foreign language Oscar race. So we hope you, yes,
Thank
exactly. We wish you a very good trajectory with this wonderful film, and thank you so much for being
Thank you.
here.